In the fall of 1997, the town of Marrow Creek, Oregon, was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. It sat tucked between the pines and low fog of the Willamette Valley, with one long stretch of road leading in and out. That October, 4 high school seniors, Eli Carter, Noah Briggs, Daniel "Danny" Keller, and Mason Reed, were on top of the world. Football season had just ended, college letters were starting to roll in, and the boys had one last Friday night before life started pulling them in different directions. They didn't know it yet, but this night would be their last. The annual Fall Bash was a local tradition. Half the school crammed into an old barn outside town, music shaking the wooden walls, headlights from parked trucks cutting through the cold air. Parents didn't like it, but they looked the other way. Eli was the driver. He had his dad's old Chevy Blazer, the same one they'd been fixing up all summer. Noah, the quiet one, had his camcorder with him. He filmed everything, even the drive there, laughing as Mason tried to freestyle rap over the radio while Danny threw chips at him from the back seat. It felt like a night that would never end. But sometime after midnight, everything changed. The party broke up around 1:30 a.m. The last confirmed sighting of the boys came from Claire Weston, a classmate who said she saw them walking toward the tree line behind the barn, just messing around, as she put it. Another witness, Evan Todd, recalled hearing Eli say something about heading toward Black Hollow Quarry, a long-abandoned pit 2 miles from the barn that local teens often dared each other to visit. But no one followed them. Everyone assumed they'd just gone to fool around or get away from the noise. When morning came, though, the Blazer was gone. And so were they. By Saturday afternoon, parents started calling each other. By Sunday morning, Marrow Creek police had launched a search, first the roads, then the woods, then the quarry. Sheriff Tom McNeil, who'd been with the department for 25 years, told reporters the area was rugged and confusing, with dozens of overgrown trails leading nowhere. "They could have gotten turned around," he said. "We're treating this as a missing persons case, not foul play." But as the days turned into weeks, that explanation started to fall apart. There were no tire tracks, no crash sites, no personal belongings found. The Blazer didn't show up on any cameras, and there were only a handful of them in the entire county back then. The boys had vanished into thin air. Eli's mother, Carol Carter, kept the porch light on for months. Mason's father organized volunteer searches, combing the woods with flashlights and dogs. Danny's older brother, a Marine stationed in California, flew home and refused to leave until the truth came out. But by week 6, the search had gone cold. Rumors spread through Marrow Creek, talk of a secret tunnel under the quarry, of a strange light seen in the woods that night, even whispers about an old man who lived near the ridge and claimed to have heard the engine revving, then nothing but silence. Police dismissed it all. But 18 weeks later, they couldn't dismiss what they found. 18 weeks had passed since that Friday night in Marrow Creek. The missing posters had faded under the rain. The police hotline had stopped ringing. And for most people in town, life had slowly gone back to normal. But for the parents, it hadn't. It was a cold February morning when a logging crew working about 4 miles north of town radioed in something unusual. One of the workers, Ken Lowell, had spotted a piece of rusted metal poking out of the soil near a narrow service road that hadn't been used in years. At first, he thought it was old farm equipment. But when they cleared more brush, they realized it wasn't. It was a vehicle roof, crushed, buried under layers of mud and pine needles. The local sheriff's office arrived within the hour. As they began to dig, what emerged made every deputy fall silent. It was a dark blue 1988 Chevy Blazer, Eli Carter's truck. The Blazer had been wedged nose down in a shallow ravine, concealed by roots and heavy branches. The damage to the body suggested it had rolled multiple times before landing upright. At first, Investigators thought it might finally be the tragic end to a long accident search, but when they opened the doors, the situation became far stranger. All 4 passenger doors were unlocked, and the keys were still in the ignition. Inside, the seats were empty. No human remains. No blood. No signs of a struggle. In the back seat, however, police found Noah's camcorder wedged between the seat cushions, still intact, still with the tape inside. Sheriff McNeil reportedly said, "If this is what I think it is, we're about to see their last moments." The tape was transferred to a lab in Salem for analysis. After cleaning it, technicians managed to recover nearly 42 minutes of footage. The first part was typical teenage nonsense, the boys singing along to the radio, teasing each other, joking about the party being lame. But around the 24-minute mark, things changed. The footage showed the boys driving down a narrow dirt trail, headlights bouncing against trees. Eli's voice can be heard saying, "This isn't the road to the quarry. This is someone's property." Mason laughs, replying, "We're not gonna get shot, chill." Then the camcorder shakes. Noah must have turned it toward the windshield. There's a flash of something in the road ahead, a pale light, then darkness. For almost a full minute, all that can be heard is the sound of the idling engine and someone whispering, "Did you see that?" Then the recording cuts to static. Investigators tried to locate the area in the video, but the trail didn't match any mapped road near the quarry. They even used old forestry charts. Nothing lined up. It was as if the boys had driven into a path that didn't officially exist. Theories began to spiral. Some said the blazer might have been moved, rolled into the ravine weeks after they vanished. Others believed the boys had been chased, forcing them off-road. A few locals went darker, claiming it had something to do with the abandoned quarry tunnels, remnants from the 1950s, rumored to stretch beneath the forest for miles. But none of those theories explained what was on the tape. When police enhanced the final seconds of the footage, they noticed something that hadn't been obvious at first. Just before the static cut, in the faint reflection of the windshield, a figure could be seen standing in the trees. Still, unmoving, too far away to make out a face. Sheriff McNeil ordered that portion of the tape to be sealed as evidence, and it was never publicly released. Forensic teams combed the area around where the blazer had been buried. They found several footprints, but rain and soil erosion made it impossible to identify. A torn flannel sleeve, possibly Danny's, was found near a creek bed, but no DNA could be confirmed. The working theory, according to the final police report, was that the boys accidentally drove off the road, panicked, and wandered into the woods in freezing temperatures. But that explanation didn't fit the video, nor the fact that the keys were still in the ignition and no windows were broken. Locals who volunteered in the search said something else. "The forest felt wrong that day," one man told reporters. "No birds, no wind, just silence." The families never stopped searching. Carol Carter kept writing letters to state investigators, begging them to reopen the case. She once told a local news crew, "I know my boy's gone, but I need to know where." By the end of that winter, all that was left were unanswered questions and one piece of evidence that nobody could explain, that 42-minute tape. But then, months later, one of the deputies who worked the case would come forward with something shocking, something the department had chosen not to release to the public. And it would change how everyone saw the Marrow Creek disappearance. Then by spring of 1998, the case of the 4 missing boys from Marrow Creek had become a memory the town tried not to talk about. The posters were gone. The search teams had disbanded. But in one corner of the sheriff's office basement, inside a locked cabinet marked "Closed Cases," there sat a single box labeled MC 97-14. Inside it, 4 missing persons files, a strip of flannel, and one VHS tape. In June of 1998, former Deputy Paul Henson resigned from the department and moved out of state. He didn't speak to anyone from Marrow Creek for years. But in 2004, nearly 7 years after the boys vanished, he gave an interview to a small Oregon newspaper. In it, he said something that reignited the entire mystery. There was a second tape. According to Henson, when the blazer was recovered, investigators found 2 cassettes, one inside the camcorder and another labeled Trail 2 in the glove compartment. Only one was logged into evidence. The second, he claimed, was taken by Sheriff McNeil himself and never seen again. Henson said that during the early review, before the state lab processed the footage, he was in the room when the sheriff watched the second tape privately. He looked pale, Henson recalled. He told everyone to clear the room. When he came out, he said, "This one's just more of the same." But it wasn't. According to him, the second tape didn't start in the car. It began in the woods. Noah's voice could be heard, shaky and whispering. The boys seemed lost. Their flashlights flickered. And at one point, the camera panned across a clearing. For a fraction of a second, the beam caught something that shouldn't have been there. A structure, Henson said. Like a shack or cabin, but not one I'd ever seen out there. It looked old, older than the town itself. Then came a voice on the recording. Not one of the boys. A man's voice, calm, low, almost whispering. "You shouldn't be here." And the tape cut to black. After that night, Henson said, the sheriff sealed the tape in his personal office safe and told no one. 3 months later, McNeil retired unexpectedly and moved to Idaho. When journalists tried to reach him years later, his family said he had passed away in 2001, and all his personal belongings, including any old evidence, had been destroyed. If the second tape ever existed, it was gone. Even without that tape, fragments of truth began to surface. In 2006, hikers exploring beyond the old quarry found remains of a small cabin foundation, hidden under ivy and brush. Local records showed a miner named Harlan Mears had lived there briefly in the 1940s, before disappearing himself. Old county logs described Mears as a recluse with strange habits, known for exploring deep into the quarry tunnels at night. Some locals called him the Watcher. That nickname matched something else from the recovered footage, the faint voice one could barely make out under the static. An audio specialist enhanced the last few seconds of the first tape and discovered a whisper under the engine noise. It said, "He's watching." In 2012, 15 years after the disappearance, new construction began near the old service road where the blazer had been found. During excavation, workers unearthed 3 shallow depressions in the soil roughly half a mile from the site. Forensic testing later confirmed 3 sets of partial remains, identified through dental records as belonging to Danny Keller, Mason Reed, and Noah Briggs. Eli Carter, the driver, was never found. The coroner couldn't determine exact causes of death due to decomposition, but all 3 skeletons showed signs of fractures consistent with a fall, though no cliff or drop-off existed nearby. Even stranger, the remains were found arranged side by side, as if deliberately placed. To this day, the Marrow Creek Four remains one of Oregon's most unsettling unsolved mysteries. The final police report lists the case as accidental death, circumstances unknown. But locals don't buy it. Every October, hikers still claim to see flickering lights deep in the forest near the quarry. And once in a while, someone swears they hear voices, faint, distorted, echoing through the trees. "He's watching." 4 boys went out for one last night together, and only 3 were ever found. What happened in those woods remains a question the town of Marrow Creek still can't answer. Maybe it was a tragic accident. Maybe something, or someone, was out there that night, waiting. 18 weeks later, police found something unbelievable. But perhaps the most chilling part is what they still haven't found. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this remind us how quickly a night of laughter can turn into a lifetime of questions. 4 friends drove into the darkness that Friday night. And somewhere between the party lights and the pines, they vanished. Maybe the truth is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Or maybe it's better left where it was found. If you'd like to see more stories like this one, make sure to like this video, leave a comment about what you think really happened that night, and subscribe so you don't miss our next mystery. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, not every disappearance stays in the dark forever.